This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
Welcome to News9 and you are watching On Point. Today we have one On Point. We look at Operation Rising Lion, in which Israel bombed Iran's nuclear facilities on Friday and wiped out its top military leadership. Now let's begin with headlines first. DGCA orders safety inspection on Air India's Boeing 787-89 fleet following deadly crash. Black box of crashed AI-171 plane recovered from BJ Medical College building. NIA team visits Ahmedabad plane crash site. Officials from other central agencies accompany NIA team. Prime Minister Modi inspects crash site, meets lone survivor and the family of former CM Vijay Rupani. Tata Group Chairman Anchan Shekharan calls tragedy one of the darkest days in Tata Group history. India abstains from a UN General Assembly resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza for the fourth time in 3 years. Raja Raghuvansh's kin seeks narco test on Sonam, her lover, to reveal full truth. CBI arrests senior professor of Northeastern Hill University for allegedly taking bribe. Former Philippines President Duterte seeks release citing age and humanitarian reasons. Israel launched preemptive strikes across Iran on Friday, targeting the heart of Iran's nuclear program with Operation Rising Lion. Israeli missiles and airstrikes hit at least a dozen key locations in Iran, including military bases and nuclear missile facilities across Tehran, Tabriz, Isfahan, Kermanshah and Arak.
But it's very clear
the nuclear site
Iran is
at Natanz sustained significant damage, and major highway connecting Tehran to Isfahan was also affected. Earlier, Prime Minister Netanyahu said Iran now has enough fuel for 9 weapons and that the country could weaponize that fuel within a year. Now let me play out a bite of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
Now the question is, why did Iran was attacked? Why was Iran attacked? Why Israel targeted nuclear facilities? Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the strikes were done to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's survival. Because he said the Iran's nuclear facilities can produce 9 weapons. He said if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon within few months. In recent months, Iran has taken steps to weaponize enriched uranium. The strikes will degrade Iran's nuclear and missile capabilities. So the issue is, how did Israel attack Iran? Over 200 Israeli fighter jets were used. more than 330 bombs were dropped and 100 targets were struck. Let me introduce my panel. The whole entire discussion has been divided into 4 parts. So this is the first part. Major Dan Pfefferman, Israel Defense Forces and Executive Director Sharaka, live from Israel. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal and Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. 3 of you join me on my show, sir. So the format is very simple. Why did Israel attack Iran? That's the first part. How did they attack them? The second part of the discussion is where did they attack them and what is the significance of Dantas? The third part would be Iran's counter response, sir. And the fourth part is the history of Israel eliminating those who have been part and parcel of nuclear programs in enemy countries. So let me straight away go to Major Dan Pfefferman, who joins me from Israel. How are you? Good to have you back on my show after a long time, Dan. Your opening comments.
Good to see you too.
Your opening comments.
Sure, and let me please express also my condolences to the people of your country over the plane crash in which so many people were injured. I couldn't quite hear your question in the recording. Can you repeat it?
I said, Dan, your opening comments, why did it become so important for Israel to attack nuclear facilities, knowing very well that, this can be completely out of control now?
Of course. Israel has long expressed its interest, and I think it speaks for much of the international community, certainly the United States and the Western powers, in preventing Iran, which is the engine, the wallet, the armory of radicalism and terrorism and proxies in the region. Iran has been attacking Israel through its proxies for the last 600 days on a 7-front war. And Iran has been espousing radical anti-Israel, anti-America, anti-West, not just sentiment in words, but has been behind an array and an army of proxies all over the region, all over the world, and behind some of the world's deadliest terrorist attacks. And so Israel has a clear interest in seeing and preventing that Iran does not achieve a nuclear weapon. The timing of this, of course, is much more complicated. And if you want, we can expand, but there are essentially 4 windows or 4 timelines that coalesced into the timing that we now have of this attack. It became clear that Iran does not want to cooperate with the international community to halt its program in exchange for sanctions relief and re-entrance in good graces into the arms of the international community. And I believe Israel, as it did with Syria, as it did with Iraq, and their nuclear programs, did the world ultimately a very big favor, despite the short-term turmoil that it causes here. But I'll remind the viewers, Iran has been attacking Israel nonstop for the last 600 days on 7 different fronts, and Israel has finally returned that strike directly to the head of the Hydra and not to its various tentacles.
Okay. Ambassador Dayal, your opening comments? Was this attack inevitable?
Well, let me tell you first that I had served as deputy to the Indian ambassador in Iran in the early 1990s. And I had observed how it was becoming an existential threat to Israel. All the time in Iran, slogans used to be chanted at various demonstrations, death to Israel. This is what the popular sentiment in Iran was trying to become. The military rule and the rule of the mullahs was gearing up the country for conflict with Iran. So it was becoming an existentialist threat to Israel. And for a long time, Israel was keen to remove this existentialist threat. And not only Iran, but there were a number of forces which had been developed around Israel, which were threatening the very existence of that country. For instance, the Hezbollah, the Hamas, the Houthis, all these were proxies of Iran, and Iran had funded them, armed them, trained them, because it wanted to use them against Israel. And in the recent Hamas-Israel conflict, we've all seen how all these proxies of Iran were very much in action, and they were themselves directly trying to target Israel. So Israel felt that there was a great need to strike at the capabilities of Iran, and it carried out one such strike last year when it was able to weaken the missile capabilities and the capabilities of the Iranians in the military sphere in many respects. And the Americans were trying to engage Israel into a nuclear deal. And they had said that if the nuclear deal cannot be reached, then it will not be good for Iran. Now, let me tell you that it had been made very clear to the Iranians that unless it reaches a nuclear deal quickly, then if it doesn't reach the deal, then consequences will not be good. And in fact, there were fears within the Americans establishment and also in Israel that Israel was very close to making a bomb. It could do so in a few months. So there were reasons why the Israelis feared that the Iranian military tacticians were not up to any good. And in fact, there was some messaging between them and the Americans because the Americans moved their non-essential deployments at their military bases out of those areas. And hold on, what they also did was they issued a travel advisory 2 days ago to Americans not to travel to this region. So clearly they knew that something was going to happen. And so I'm not surprised because both the Americans and the Israelis were keen to knock out this nuclear capability of the Iranians and weaken them militarily because otherwise the Iranians were becoming a great threat to Israel.
Okay. For our viewers, before I go to General Kulkarni, on June 7, 1981, the State of Israel conducted an aerial attack on the Iraqi nuclear reactor known as Tammuz 1 located near Baghdad. It's known as the Osirak Attack. The attack was carried out by F-15s and 16s aircraft supplied by United States of America. The reactor was damaged severely. 3 Iraqi civilians and 1 French technician were killed. So, General, this is not the first time Israel has done something like that. Osirak had set a precedent long time back in 1981 that the state of Israel would not allow any state to cross that nuclear threshold. Sir, General Kulkarni, the question is to you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. To add to what the ambassador has said and to what Dan has said, I'll just give a little brief mistake. Till the inception of Israel until 1979, I think Israel has contributed a lot for the growth of Iran. So that is something we need to know. It's only from 1979 once the revolution in Iran took place and continuing till about 2000, and then you just mentioned 1981, the nuclear part in which they struck Iraq, and after that Iraq never attempted to do that. From 1979 till about 2000, in around 2000, the hostilities with, Iran and Israel had turned hostile, but they turned enemies after 2000, primarily because of this nuclear thing. Because once Israel got to know that the Iranians were busy wanting to have a nuclear involved into making of a nuclear bomb, then the relations went bad. Having said that, once the IAEA, now in the recent past, very clearly stated that the enrichment capability of Iran had gone beyond 70%, and like the Israeli Prime Minister said, they could make about 9 nuclear bombs, and that the activities that were taking place in Iran had crossed all thresholds at any point of time. Iran, it's just a turn of a screw, whether it should be 2 months or a maximum a year. It is better to hold Iran as much as that halted Iraq in 1981. So after 1979, you see the kind of activities that are taking place. What is most, it amazes me in the recent military history, I have not seen a nation which knows and is prepared. It says very clearly, it's promise free. That means it has been attacked twice over. It has had its red flag twice over its mosque to be able to say we intend to take revenge. Collapse, just collapse in about 5 to 7 hours. total military paralysis, whether it was of political leadership, whether it's military leadership, whether it is intelligence, whether it is the military hardware of Iran. Total collapse. Have you ever seen a country which collapses like this? And Iran, a nation which is 75 times the size of Israel, 1/10 the population of Iran, and a GDP much more than that of Israel, and collapses. I don't think Iran has now lost the will to fight. Can you imagine that they try to make noises, but nothing? The entire air defense penetrated 200 aircraft, hitting 100 targets, 330 bombs, returned back to the airfield, keep doing all of it over and over again. Nuclear installation gone, enrichment capacity is gone, top leadership of army gone, top leadership of nuclear scientists gone. Imagine what a state, a country which knew the attack was coming, a country which is in negotiation for a nuclear deal with America, and the fifth roundtable conference going on. Can you imagine a country like Iran collapsing? And that is where I think Israel has actually done what I don't think anybody can do, penetrating air defense. And now at the time when Russia cannot help Iran, China cannot help Iran, none of the Middle East countries will help Iran because nobody reinforces failure. It's absolute failure. If you haven't retaliated, and it has retaliated. Iran has retaliated with 400 drones, and all of it, nothing. All of them just have collapsed. I cannot imagine a country which knows an attack is coming, a country which is, giving military hardware to Russia, is giving drones. There are super capacities for drones, missiles, everything. And there you find a nation finished. I don't think Iran will ever want to do it unless there is a change of regime, and that's the only way Iranians hereinafter can save their faith by having a change of regime. Otherwise, Iran's heading for trouble.
Okay, you're saying that Iran is heading for trouble. Now, where did the strikes take place and who did they kill? Iran's nuclear sites were attacked. Natanz uranium enrichment facility, significance, Iran's largest and the most fortified enrichment area, contains both underground and above ground centrifuge halls. Further fuel enrichment plant, deeply buried hardened facility inside mountain used for enriching uranium to higher purity levels up to 60%. Isfahan Nuclear Technology Center, research reactors are there, uranium conversion equipments are there, Arak heavy water reactor, plutonium production potential, it has been reactivated. That's the allegation. Let me play out the bite of the Israel's ambassador to India first.
But it's very clear that Iran is retaliating, and we are going to have to retaliate ourselves. Now, if Iran decides to attack other players in the region, other countries, then they will have to bear the consequences, because we cannot predict, I don't want to speculate. But at the end of the day, they will have to take the risk. If they decide to do that, I think it would be detrimental to their interests, but that's their bit. Iran has been trying to create a ring of fire around Israel. Yes. It equipped Hezbollah with missiles, with factories of missiles, with technology, with training, with finance. It has done the same with militias in Syria that now have been defeated by the Julani regime. They have been doing that in Iraq with the Shiite militias there that have been threatening the American forces. They have been doing that with Houthis in Yemen, and they have actually exported factories of production of missiles underground in the Houthi areas in Yemen.
So, why Natanz matter? Built secretly in 2002, it is Iran's oldest enrichment facility. Has commercial fuel enrichment plant and pilot fuel enrichment plant. Capacity 1 lakh centrifuges. 82 cascades including advanced centrifuges capable of rapidly enriching uranium that are operating there. Unlike previous strikes, Israel struck directly inside Iran and simultaneously eliminated several high-ranking officials. Strikes targeted military leaders, homes, even within the secure compounds, leading to the collapse of entire apartment blocks in some parts of Tehran. So who was targeted? Major General Mohammad Bagheri, the Chief of Staff of Iran's Armed Forces, General Hossein Salami, Commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Gholmali Rashid, physicist Mohammad Mehdi Tehranji, nuclear scientist Ferdian Abbasi. Now, Let me straight away go to Ambassador Prabhu. Sir, two things. One is the control of IRGC and Basij in Iran, which is the paramilitary, complete. And my second question is, Qasem Soleimani was bumped off by Americans in Iraq, and then they, rained missiles on the base, and the entire thing ended. Do you think that this time the response can be disproportionate? Because right now only the drone attacks have taken place. So these are two questions. That will anything change in Iran with the IRGC and Basij controlling? And secondly, what sort of response do you expect this time, keeping in mind that the senior leadership has been hit?
The IRGC and the military command are always in control in Iran. This is not anything new. And they only report to the supreme leader, who now is Ayatollah Khamenei. Earlier it used to be Khomeini. Now, the capacity of Iran to hit back has been weakened a lot. And Israel has been able to do this successfully, firstly due to its attacks on Israeli military sites in October last year, and now by the present strikes, which have again targeted military sites within Iran. So Iran's capacity to hit back has been weakened. No doubt it will try and hit to some extent, and it has already launched some drone attacks. I have read in the media that Israel says that it has struck down all these drones which tried to attack it. The fact of the matter is that if there is any Iranian attack and if there's any escalation from the side of Iran, then Israel will attack even more vehemently. So the consequences of escalation are going to be more for Iran than they are going to be for Israel. Because militarily, there is no doubt that Israel is much stronger than Iran. And moreover, it is also assisted by the United States. Now, Trump has said, and Marco Rubio also, that the United States was not involved in this military operation. But there is no doubt that the United States was aware of what happened. Trump has said that he was aware that Israel was going to attack. And there is also no doubt that the Americans have assisted Israel militarily and made it considerably stronger than Iran. So if Iran retaliates, the consequences for it are not going to be good. And as it is, the signal has been sent to the Iranians by the killing of the army chief and also the IRGC head, as also the killing of some of their top nuclear scientists. So Israel has been able to convey that we will hit very strongly, very hard where we want to. So I don't think there is going to be any escalation beyond a point from the Iranian side, because the consequences for them are going to be very heavy.
Dan, my question to you is, it is one thing to hit Hezbollah inside Lebanon. It is one thing to hit Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations inside Syria. But Iran is a big state. It has a big army. It has its big missiles. You have Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow systems. But when you deal with a state, there will be a time that something might slip in. And what I mean is a ballistic missile.
Yeah, that's always the threat when you attack, whether it's justified and preemptive or not, you risk a retaliation. But of course, and as the ambassador and the general have alluded to, Israel has been under constant attack by Iran and its proxies over the last 600 days. There's not much more Iran can do to escalate. In the previous rounds in April and October, when Iran fired a combined 300 ballistic missiles and UAVs at Israel, now 400 if you count today's 100 UAVs that were fired, I think 99% of them were intercepted by a regional missile defense architecture put together by the Americans. Israel and its various allies and the American allies and system in the region have more than enough capability, but there is a risk anytime that you strike. It is important to reiterate here, though, that in the two previous Iranian strikes on Israel that were in the retaliatory strikes, almost all, if not all, of Iran's missile defenses were taken out. A significant part of its ballistic missile array and the production facilities were taken out. And from what I understand from today's strikes, a lot of the additional missile defenses that were left, and the ballistic missile installations were taken out in various Israeli intelligence operations. Iran has literally showed itself to be quite the paper tiger over the last year. It has shown that, and we've always known, that Iran itself on a military level does not have the capacity to wage direct and protracted war. And Iran has generally gone in the strategy of building and arming significantly, as my fellow co-panelists here said, significant ring of fire strategy, as they call it, of well-armed, well-funded proxies around Israel. And a part of the reason why we see the timing of this attack is because those were significantly degraded, especially Hezbollah and Syria, of course, over the last year. And so the timing of this attack, if you take into account Iran's inability to really respond and escalate more than it has been doing for the last 600 days, if you take into account the significant jumps or advancements in the actual nuclear program, if you take into account the Trump administration, and if you take into account one last, I think, very important window is Israel's apparently highly increased capacity to both conduct complex long-distance attacks, which it was not, that was always the question, can Israel conduct such prolonged attacks at such a distance? And of course, can it hit secure nuclear sites that are deep underground? And as we saw in places, certainly in Gaza, where the tunnels are some 50 meters underground, but also in Hezbollah, where Hassan Nasrallah and the Hezbollah leadership were taken out deep underground. So it seems all of these windows came together, but back to your question, one of the key windows was Iran's inability to really respond or escalate, whether directly or through its proxy array in the region.
General Kulkarni, do you agree that the response is going to remain lame and weak, as Dan said?
I think so, Karthikeya, because what happens is, once the nation loses its willpower, when the top leadership is gone, the Khamenei is, very old, is unable to do anything. The president is okay, fine, but notwithstanding all that, can you imagine Mossad has infiltrated into Iran and working as eyes and ears inside Iran, knocking off everything? It's something unbelievable. That a nation which is at war with another country, like what Dan said, 600 days, imagine the kind of the infrastructure created in Gaza for Hamas with the help of Iran. You see the kind of Hezbollah leadership that was there. You see Houthi, the way they are onto the Red Sea. All of it, despite all that, and all the facilities available, all the information available, inputs available, here you find that you have not even reacted. Those 400 drones and missiles have just been intercepted and gone. Not one has hit anywhere. Now, if this be the state of affairs, then this is what the Iranian leadership is talking about, Promise 3. They know, they have gone through Promise 1, they have gone through Promise 2, and now they are on to Promise 3. What did they do in the earlier promises? The same thing. You had Hania dead, you had that red flag on top of the mosque. You had the Soleimani dead, same red flag on top of the mosque. They will take revenge, they will take revenge. What kind of revenge is this? Iran has actually speaking, we have fantastic relations with Iran, no doubt. We have fantastic relations with Israel, no doubt about that. But Iran made an absolute a spectacle of itself in this particular thing. I think
sir,
as a nation,
sir, it's also a reflection of the Shia-Sunni axis in the entire West Asia. I mean, so not a single statement of Mohammed bin Zayed or Mohammed bin Salman has come. People see this and perhaps, a sort of a short documentary of this can be made and sent it to Mr. Munir, who talked about Muslim as one nation, to understand the complex reality of the world. But Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Al-Khamenei issued a stern warning on state television saying Israel should anticipate a harsh punishment. The strong hand of the Islamic Republic will not let them go. Subsequently, Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, gave a public reaction.
سلام و درود به ملت عزیز و رشید ایران. نیمه شب گذشته شاهد تجاوز وحشیانه رژیم جنایتکار صهیونیستی به تهران و شهرهای دیگر از کشور بودیم که منجر به شهادت تعدادی از کودکان و زنان، جمعی از شهروندان بیگناه، فرماندهان نظامی و دانشمندان هسته‌ای شد. این اقدام سبعانه که برخلاف همه تعهدات بین المللی بود، مؤید خوی جنایتکارانه رژیم نامشروع صهیونیستی است که موجودیت خود را بر پایه اشغال و تجاوز و کودک کشی بنا نهاده است. تجاوز شب گذشته به همه جهانیان حقانیت ادعای چندین و چند ساله جمهوری اسلامی ایران مبنی بر این که تجاوز و جنایت با ذات رژیم صهیونیستی عجین بوده را اثبات کرد.
Iran launched a big drone attack. The drone attack was neutralized by the Israeli military. Let me play out the bite of the spokesperson, Brigadier General F.E. Defrin, to you.
Over the past few months, intelligence has shown that Iran is closer than ever to obtaining a nuclear weapon. This morning, the IDF began preemptive and precise strikes targeting the Iranian nuclear program in order to prevent the Iranian regime's ability to build a nuclear bomb in the immediate time frame. We have no choice. We are operating against an imminent and existential threat. We cannot allow the Iranian regime to obtain a nuclear weapon that would be a danger to Israel and the entire world. This operation is for our right to exist here, for our future and for our children's future. The State of Israel has the right and the obligation to operate in order to protect its people and will continue to do so.
And now let me play out a reaction of Alexandra Velusi, spokesperson for the United Nations Office of Geneva.
The Secretary General condemns any military escalation in the Middle East. He is particularly concerned by Israeli attacks on nuclear installations in Iran, while talks between Iran and the United States on the status of Iran's nuclear program are underway. The Secretary General recalls the obligation of UN member states to act in accordance with the UN Charter and international law.
Thursday, the International Atomic Energy Agency said that Iran was violating the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and amassed 400 kg of highly enriched uranium.
At present, the competent Iranian authorities have confirmed that the Natanz enrichment site has been impacted and that there are no elevated radiation levels. They have also reported that at present the Esfahan and Fordow sites have not been impacted. This development is deeply concerning. I have repeatedly stated that nuclear facilities must never be attacked, regardless of the context or circumstances, as it could harm both people and the environment. Despite the current military actions and heightened tensions, it is clear that the only sustainable path forward for Iran, for Israel, the entire region, and the international community is one grounded dialogue and diplomacy to ensure peace, stability, and cooperation.
Israel has historically gone after the top brass of Iran's nuclear program and hunted them down. I'll take you through some examples. Way back, January 12th, 2010, Iranian nuclear physicist was targeted. He was killed by a remote-controlled bomb rigged to a motorcycle outside his home in Tehran. Then, on November 29, 2010, another scientist was targeted, Majid Shahriari. He was expert in nuclear isotopes. He was killed by a car bomb, which was attached by a motorcyclist, and it was a magnetic explosive. Daryush Rezanijad, 2011, electronic expert linked to military program, shot dead outside his home by motorcycle, riding gunmen. Mustafa Ahmadi, 2012, Natanz facility officer, killed in car bombing in Tehran. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, 2020, head of Iran's secret nuclear weapons program. A sophisticated AI-assisted remote-controlled machine gun was used. Subsequently, number of such attacks took place. And this is not the first time Israel has done that. I spoke of Osirak, and the history is replete with such examples. I'm also joined by Dr. Wael Awad, strategic expert, someone who understands West Asia. But before I go to you, I want to speak to Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, and General Kulkarni also continues to be with me. Sir, is in Iran, state and society continues to be one thing, or they can be treated as two different things?
Or general? Because you mentioned both of us.
No, it's to you, sir. The question is to you.
No, of course. In every country, there is a state and there is society. And they blend in different degrees in different countries. Now in Iran, the state calls the shots. It is not a democracy. It is ruled by the clergy. And the military establishment works directly under the control of the clergy. That is the structure of the Iranian polity. I saw it firsthand, as I said, because I was posted for 3 years in Iran in the early 1990s. It was then very much like that, and it has not changed. Now, the clergy determines the foreign policy of the country to a great extent. And by and large, it decides who are going to be treated as friends and who are not going to be treated as friends. I remember at the time I was posted there, during the demonstrations, there used to be slogans, death to America, death to Israel. Because these two countries were perceived by the Iranians as their biggest enemies. And not surprisingly, the Americans and the Israelis have been working together to make Iran abandon its nuclear ambitions. The Israelis perceive Iran as an existentialist threat. And they feel that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, then it will pose a very big danger to it. That is why the Israelis do not want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and the Americans think as the Israelis do and have been helping the Israelis in every manner possible, including by building pressure on Iran. So, to come back to your fundamental question, is there a difference between the way society would think and the way the state would think? Well, maybe the society at large in Iran wants a friendlier relationship with the United States. Maybe it feels that the economic interests of the country are being hurt because of the hostile relationship. But, and this is a fundamental but, the government, which is controlled by the clergy and the military establishment, thinks of America as an enemy. In fact, it used to call it the great Satan, Shaitan-e-Buzurg. And that is why they do not see any future in a positive relationship with the United States. I don't see that there would be any improvement in Iran's relations with the United States or with Israel. And in fact, these two countries, Israel and the United States, would want a regime change. And not surprisingly, the operation mounted against Iran has been called Operation Rising Lion. Of course, it is a quote from the Bible. But at the same time, let us not forget that the flag of the Pahlavis, Iran, when it was ruled by the Shahs, that flag had a rising lion in the middle. So there is an attempt at a regime change. I think there is a great game going on. There are many possibilities. This is not the end of the thing, because the attack which has taken place is not going to end with just this limited attack. As the Americans have said, there could be many, many more to follow. So let us see how things shape out.
Okay. Your opening comments, Dr. Wael Awad, thank you for making time.
Michael Karthik, I think this is a war. It's not one battle, and Israel have already declared it a war. But who will stop this war? It depends on the reaction from the Iranian side. This is a condemnable war because everybody knows that this is a sovereign nation attacked by another nation who is claiming that Iran may be having a nuclear bomb, but they are themselves having the nuclear arsenal, and nobody talk about their own nuclear arsenal, naming it Israel. So therefore, I think the Israeli carried out the attack along with the American blessing, and that's why American wanted to put more pressure on the Iranian when they come to the negotiation that the sixth round of talk, which was supposedly to be held on Sunday in Oman. But the problem is that Israeli have done this preemptive strike not only on the nuclear side, which is also harmful, even if the Iranian have a nuclear ambition to do so. The radiation will have a great impact on a grave impact on the neighboring countries. Therefore, there is no way that you can let a state, exceptionally the spoiled child of United States, continue bombing countries and causing damage to the environment and to the people life in those regions. Therefore, I think we should all take a stand on the action that has been carried out, because even the civilian have been targeted. More than 80 people have been killed. More than 380 has been injured. More than 10 scientists has been killed. So the major operation carried in 3 dimensions by the Israelis. And I think the response from the Iranian will all depend on the UN Security Council resolution. If they don't come with the resolution condemning this attack, Iran have no other option but to retaliate. Then that is what the UN Charter give any country that be subjected to any kind of an attack to retaliate on that sense. So therefore, I think the war going to be expanded. That's what Netanyahu have been hoping for. He may be saying that I'm doing it unilaterally, but American had the full knowledge of this operation. And you know, Karthik, when the Americans were pulling their relatives and friends of the Marines and the families of them out of the Gulf country, the American knew in advance that the attack is taking place. So therefore, they cannot, wash their hands and they say we have nothing to do with this sort of an attack, because America is putting more pressure on the Iranian and saying that this an attack by the Israelis is just to bring them back to the negotiating table. And if they don't come, I think America will step in. And that's what Netanyahu is hoping for.
So you are saying that it's a tango?
It is, absolutely. And that is where they are dragging Iran into a regional war, where the Asia will suffer the maximum. You have 34% of the oil and gas comes from Strait of Hormuz, from 14% from the Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea has been impacted. India, China, Korea, Japan will be the country suffering the first place at any kind of a instability. And I think India is one of the major stakeholders in the region, not only in terms of oil and food security, but also of the Indian expats who are having a 9 million Indian living in the GCC if this war spread into this regional countries.
Dr. Awad, is it in a realm of possibility, if I ask you this question, that can there be a reconciliation between Israel and Iran?
What is the reconciliation? I mean, a country which have already been, the Shah was the watchdog of the American ever since the Iranian Revolution have come and they closed the Israel embassy in Tehran and they opened a Palestinian embassy. Israel took a stand that this regime will never be friendly with Israel because they're already having different objectives. As you know, they're already annihilating the whole of Palestine. They took in Hezbollah in Lebanon. They took on the Syrian regime and they are destabilizing Syria. And now they wanted to expand at the coast. You have taken 65 kilometers deep inside Syrian territory, bombing it daily on that front. Even the Jordanian feeling the heat. So they know that the main objective of Israel is to completely annihilate the whole of Palestine, no Palestinian solution. So therefore, Karthik, I think the bringing Iran into this war is just to save Netanyahu political carrier, because the moment the war stopped, he failed in Gaza till date. Over the last 17 months, he was unable to achieve his objective. And now expanding the war into Iran and dragging the whole region into an open war, I think this is a very dangerous step. And the moment the war stops, we all know that his career will be will put to an end. So therefore, we are not very optimistic about this development. And America take the full responsibility for allowing this mess to be created.
General Kulkarni, do you think that the Israelis failed in their political objectives in Gaza? I think they have met their political objective. I think in context of deterrence, they have already done that. Though I know it sounds in a very brutal way, and I disagree with what has happened in Gaza. Thousands have died.
See, Kartik, if you look at it, the way the Iranians have gone about supporting the Hamas and the way Hamas has been able to stand up to Israel for the last over 600 days and has been busy fighting it out, it hasn't totally collapsed. It should have collapsed long back, but it hasn't collapsed. That means there is a certain amount of resistance. Israel hasn't achieved 100% aim of wanting to take Gaza and or make Gaza do what it wants to do. So, well, but to a large extent, the Palestinians in Gaza have realized that it's futile, but well, they are holding on to it. But as regards Hezbollah is concerned, positively the leadership has gone. As regards Houthi is concerned, well, yes, they are still controlling, and the control because of the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, as rightly brought out the doctor, that primarily because 20% to 27% of the crude oil is passing through that. So it's going to be a problematic this thing. But what surprises me, again, Dr. Ahmad is there and I would like him to intervene also. The Iranians have not been able to stand up to Israel in this particular attack. Iranians have done a wonderful job by wanting to do what they wanted to do from 2000 till 2025 and will continue to do. It is their right, they what they wish to do. The Americans have stood with the Israelis. There is no denying the fact. The President of America has accepted that they were informed and that he has stated very clearly they don't intend, but should any American interest get harmed, they will step into it.
Absolutely, sir.
Iran is definitely under pressure.
Absolutely. I think the Iran stand, absolutely, Trump to the Wall Street Journal, Ambassador Dayal, said we were aware of the Israel's plan to attack Iran. Trump in another quote to Wall Street Journal said, sir, spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday and his plans, we plan to speak with him again. And he again in another quote to Wall Street Journal, he said attack would be great for the market because of Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. I don't know what's happening to the American diplomacy. But another information is that the Netanyahu spoke to Prime Minister Modi before striking Iran. He also spoke with the leaders of Germany and France. So it means that in today, it's Iran which is completely isolated. Isn't that so?
Well, I don't know whom Netanyahu spoke to. But the fact of the matter is that Iran has very few friends left in the region. Pakistan could have been a good friend, but even Pakistan is being wooed away by the Americans, as is evident from the billions of dollars in assistance which has come to Pakistan through the IMF and the World Bank. And the recent visit of General Asim Munir to the United States also indicates that there is a close relationship which is developing between the United States and Pakistan. So I don't see any closeness between these two countries, Iran and Pakistan. Now, as regards the Gulf countries, they have always been very apprehensive about Iran's intentions. And while they don't want trouble, they don't want conflict, but nonetheless, they are deeply suspicious of what they feel is Iran's intention to export the revolution. Iran always said that its intention was exporting the revolution, that is the Islamic revolution, and they don't want anything like that happening because naturally the sheikdoms would be disrupted. Now, the fact of the matter is that the United States and Israel are doing their level best to pressurize Iran to agree to the nuclear deal. If it agrees to the nuclear deal, then its nuclear weapons capability will be capped. It will not be able to make nuclear weapons. And it will be allowed to sort of continue the rest of its existence as it likes. But I do not know whether Iran would be willing to do that. So for that reason, there is a likelihood that the conflict could escalate. If Iran comes to the negotiating table quickly, in fact, on Sunday, there are talks which are scheduled between the Americans and the Iranians in Oman. And if there are some indications that these talks are moving forward and that Iran is going to agree to the limitations on its nuclear capabilities, then maybe the conflict could end. But if Iran doesn't agree, then there is every likelihood that this conflict will continue. So I don't think at the moment things are very clear. There is a possibility of an escalation. and that escalation would also pressurize Iran. It would be intended to pressurize Iran to agree to the nuclear deal. So let's see what happens in the next few days.
Dr. Wael Awad, do you think that Iran will come to the table?
I think they have already made their stand that they are not going to on Sunday to Muscat to discuss with the United States because of the American fully involved in this war. In fact, a few minutes ago, there was also they called on the Swedish ambassador in Tehran and they lodged a strong complaint because they look after the American interest in Iran, and they lodged a strong complaint and condemnation for the United States knowingly that this war was taking place a week before the attack, and they were still negotiating and taking Iran, on the negotiating table and the pretext that they wanted to find a solution. Therefore, the intention was to go for a war against Iran, and I don't think this is a war against on the pretext of Iran having a nuclear. It is a regime change policy that the Americans have been having it for more than 2 decades against Syria, against Iraq, against Afghanistan, against even Yugoslavia, against Libya, name it, and the American policy, clean and break policy have been implemented. So I think Iran fall in that category, and President Trump has fallen into the trap of Netanyahu that he dragged him, although he was saying he wanted to negotiate, but that is not the way to negotiate. So Iran, for sure, they are a sovereign state, independent, all alone at this war, but definitely they will retaliate. And this time retaliation will be stronger than Israel can expect it. I think Israel did a grave mistake by attacking Iran at this stage, despite the fact that they have achieved their objective. Yes, in Gaza, yes, in Syria, yes, in Lebanon, but even Houthis are paying the price. But at the end of the day, Iran is not a small country. And remember also, you should remember, and our distinguished guests who are all very well knowledgeable, that the Iranian geopolitical importance is one of the main objectives for this war. It is Iran closeness to China, to Russia, to India that have been creating this problem. Remember the north-south corridors that come from Russia through Iran into India and China, and talk about the other route that Iran has been providing, and even the American trying to put lots of pressure on Iran. So therefore, the war is not in isolation that the American wanted only Israel to do and be the dominant force in the region. It is also wanted to teach Iran a lesson, and they wanted Iran to be out of the formula of Iran, Russia, China, because Americans are even trying to isolate Russia in Ukraine, and they are trying to woo Putin into their fold. They wanted to keep China on the separate because the next war is in the Asia Pacific. And I think we should look strategically for this kind of a war where America not only destabilizing the region, but the sole responsible for all the mess they created in the Middle East. And they're always fishing in the turbulent water of the Strait of Hormuz or Red Sea or the Mediterranean Sea.
Very quickly, I need to close the show. Can there be a Russian and a Chinese play?
Yes, that's right. Russian and Chinese, I think the Chinese are the first forces to move their warships in the region, and they are already in high alert because they know that the American plan is bigger than the war currently going on. And I think it's going to be a wider war.
General Kulkarni, the question to you, can there be a Russian and Chinese play, or is just overstated when it comes to Iran?
Presently, Russia, no. China will not. Because China is also economically under pressure, and Russians definitely with Ukraine. So much that Iran would have loved to be, if Iran was in a situation where it could take help from Russia and China, it would have been better off. But probably the attacks have been timed in such a manner that Iran is isolated. Because the very fact that Iran has not retaliated the way Iran is capable of retaliating, the very fact that Iran has tremendous missile capabilities and drone facilities and has not been able to use or have been neutralized is indicative somewhere a fault line in Iran. I cannot even imagine Mossad so deep inside Iran and facilitating all the attacks that have taken place inside Iran. So there is something wrong. Iran administration or the leadership probably has collapsed suddenly, and it may take time for Iran to again step up. Because Iran is not a country of history, it's an old civilization, has all the facilities, the abilities to be able to do it. But somehow or the other, this particular promise tree of Iran has not lived up to it.
I kind of agree with you, sir, because Ambassador Dayal, when he said it, I I agree with him that there is a degradation in terms of response. Iranian response to Israeli aggression in last 1 year has been weak. It has been ineffective because it has failed to create any sort of a deterrence. Thank you all of you for joining me, sir. I have really run short of time. So the cycle of violence is not expected to end anytime soon in West Asia, but the fact of the matter is that Israel very clearly says that making a bomb in the vicinity is crossing a threshold, like crossing a Rubicon line, and they will not allow it. And that is why the attack on Iran took place, because Israeli assessment is that if they don't do it, the window will close, and Israel will end up having that much of enriched uranium through which they can make 9 nuclear bombs. So this is all I have on Point tonight. I will see you on Monday at the same time. Thank you and good night.
This is the tribe of your dreams. Introducing the all-new Skoda Kailak. Own your dream.
Skoda. Your walls are just OMG. Which paint?